Welcome, dear listeners, to another chilling episode of Wicked Whispers, where the shadows come alive and nightmares whisper their secrets.
The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the briny scent of the Atlantic. The night was dark, the moon hidden behind a thick blanket of clouds, leaving the world beneath in a shroud of darkness. Cape May stood silent, its streets deserted, its home shuttered against the approaching storm. But there, standing alone on the edge of the sea, was the lighthouse, a beacon of hope for sailors lost in the night, and a place where the past refused to rest. The Cape May Lighthouse had stood for nearly 2 centuries, guiding ships safely to shore with its steady, unwavering light. But with its long history came stories, tales of shipwrecks, of sailors lost to the deep, and of the spirits who were said to haunt the tower, their restless souls forever tied to the place that had witnessed so much tragedy. It was said that on stormy nights, when the wind screamed through the narrow streets of Cape May and the waves crashed against the shore with a fury that could pull a man under, the lighthouse came alive with the spirits of those who had perished at sea. Some claimed to have seen the ghostly figure of a lighthouse keeper, endlessly patrolling the tower, his lantern casting an eerie glow that defied the laws of nature. Others spoke of strange lights flickering at the top of the lighthouse, lights that seemed to dance and sway in a rhythm all their own, as if guided by unseen hands. I had heard the stories all my life, passed down from generation to generation, whispered in hushed tones as the waves lapped at the shore. But I had never given them much thought. Ghosts were for children's tales, for those who believed in things that went bump in the night. I was a man of reason, of logic. But as I stood at the base of the lighthouse, the wind tugging at my coat, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, something that had been waiting for me to come. The lighthouse loomed above me, its whitewashed walls glowing faintly in the dim light. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the sound swallowed by the roar of the wind. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of salt and damp, the walls lined with old, rusted equipment that had seen better days. The stairs spiraled upwards, disappearing into the darkness above, and I hesitated, a sense of unease settling in the pit of my stomach. I shook it off. I was here to prove the stories wrong, to show that there was nothing more to the lighthouse than bricks and mortar. But as I began to climb the stairs, the old wood groaning under my weight, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was now alone. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and I could hear the distant sound of the waves crashing against the rocks below. The air grew colder as I ascended, each step taking me deeper into the heart of the tower. My breath came in shallow gasps, the chill seeping into my bones, and I could feel the weight of the years pressing down on me, the history of the place wrapping around me like a shroud. And then, I heard it, a faint, distant sound that sent a shiver down my spine. It was the sound of footsteps, echoing up from the darkness below. I stopped, my heart pounding in my chest, and listened. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, climbing the stairs with a purpose that sent a wave of fear crashing over me. I turned, peering into the darkness below, but there was nothing there, only shadows and the flickering light of the lantern I carried. But the footsteps continued, growing louder, closer, until they seemed to be just a few steps behind me. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck, and I spun around, my lantern held high, but the stairs were empty, the darkness swallowing the light. I stood frozen, my mind racing. Had I imagined it? Was it just the wind, playing tricks on my ears? But deep down, I knew the truth. The stories were real, the lighthouse was haunted, and whatever was there with me had been waiting for this moment, waiting for someone to dare to challenge its presence. I forced myself to continue, each step a battle against the fear that clawed at my insides. The stairs creaked and groaned under my weight, the sound echoing up the tower like a death knell. The air grew colder still, the walls closing in around me, and I could feel the presence following me, its footsteps a constant reminder that I was now alone. At last, I reached the top of the stairs, the lantern flickering weakly in the darkness. The room at the top of the lighthouse was small and cramped, the walls lined with old maps and charts, the lantern that had once guided ships safely to shore now cold and dark. I set my lantern down on the table, the light casting long, eerie shadows across the room, and turned to face the stairs. There, standing at the top, was the figure of a man, a lighthouse keeper, his face gaunt and pale, his eyes hollow and empty. He wore an old, weathered uniform, the fabric tattered and torn, and he held a lantern in his hand, the light flickering weakly in the darkness. He stared at me, his gaze piercing, and I could feel the weight of his sorrow, his pain, pressing down on me like a lead weight. For a moment, we stood there, staring at each other, the only sound the howling of the wind outside. And then, without a word, he turned and walked toward the window, his lantern held high, the light flickering in time with the storm outside. I watched as he approached the glass, his hand resting on the frame, and then he was gone, vanished into the night, leaving only the faint glow of his lantern behind. I stood there, my heart racing, my mind reeling. Had I really seen what I thought I had? Or was it just my imagination, the result of too many ghost stories and too little sleep? But as I turned to leave, I caught sight of something out of the corner of my eye, an old photograph, hanging on the wall. It was a picture of the lighthouse keeper, standing proudly in front of the tower, his face young and full of life. But there, in the corner of the photograph, was something else, a faint, ghostly figure, barely visible, standing just behind him, its hand resting on his shoulder. The photograph slipped from my grasp, falling to the floor with a soft thud. I stared at it, my mind racing, and I knew, without a doubt, that the lighthouse was indeed haunted, and that the spirits of the past were still there, waiting, watching, and guiding those who dared to come near. I left the lighthouse that night, the storm still raging outside, the wind howling through the trees like a mournful wail. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had left something behind, something that I could never get back. As I drove away, the lighthouse fading into the distance, I couldn't help but wonder how many others had seen what I had seen, how many others had been touched by the spirits of the past. And I knew, deep down, that the haunted lighthouse of Cape May would continue to stand as a beacon of hope and a reminder of the ghosts that still lingered in the shadows.